Well, I wanted to jump on here and kind of discuss something with you guys that I think is on a lot of people's hearts, and it has been for a while. And definitely, no doubt, it's been on my mind and in my heart. So we see people, we hear people many times saying, "Hey, I just want to go grab some land. I just want to get out of the city. I want to go somewhere. I want to live somewhere else." And yeah, it's a big leap, I'm sure. I live in the suburbs. I love my house. I love my neighborhood, and um, it's beautiful where I live. Because I'm in Houston, especially since I bought my house about 14 years ago. The cost of my house now, I probably couldn't afford it today if I had to repurchase it. So I have a great, thing going. And it's a scary thing to think about, wanting to leave your home or leaving the state or leaving your city and going to the country, right? Because if you live close to the city, most of the time the property is going to be a lot more expensive than it is in remote areas. And then you have to think about, the long term. Like, what does this look like over time? Like, when I get older, and I'm getting older, and this, if people are thinking this, and what about medical facilities? Like, you don't want to be an hour and a half away from a hospital, and it's true that the life expectancy of people in very rural areas is close to 10 years shorter because of not having easy access to medical. Now, some things, there may be some gaps that are bridged with technology nowadays, but for the most part, you still have to be seen by a doctor most of the time to diagnose some of the, and get testing and things like that. So I was on a mad dash looking around for where I want to go, where I want to live, because we too want land. And it's really difficult. So some of the reasons why we want to get land and leave the city, so to speak. There's some children behind my phone, and I don't want people thinking I'm filming their kids. That's weird. So, so basically, I want land because, first of all, I live in Houston, Texas. I love to garden. I mean, love it. I teach people how to garden indoors and outdoors. I teach also how to store your own food. I talk about canning and all that. And on this channel, I'll be doing some of that with you guys too. So, and showing you the things that we do. I converted my backyard into a suburban farm. Literally, when you walk in my backyard, when I film, people, I asked people, I think on one of the social media outlets, like, where do you think I live? And they said everything but a suburb. I think only one person said suburb, because it's my aunt. She knows where I live. She knows I live in the suburbs. So, the suburbs of Houston, Texas, currently. And so, yeah, I don't want to live here because, although I love my home and it's beautiful, it's a big 3,300 square foot house in Texas, especially 10, 15 years ago, and even up to 5 or 6 years ago, you could get a really nice house much cheaper than you could in other parts of the country, certain parts of the country. So it's hot here. It's hot a lot, like scorching heat. So in the beginning of September, it used to be that we would get the cool breeze in the morning and it would be warmer in the afternoon. That didn't happen until October now. Global warming is real. I don't know. Some people debate it. You really can't. It's pretty obvious now. When they first started talking about it, and then I think Al Gore was in it, and people were like, nowadays, there's no denying it. It's real. The ice caps are definitely melting, which is dumping more water into the sea. Coastlines are going to start increasing. In a couple of generations, our coastlines are going to be eaten into. Florida is going to have a lot of issues. The water is already seeping in upward in the middle of the state and around the coastline. It's going to have more water there. Much more water than they do. I'm not in Florida. It's even hotter there. Like, I never even try to compare our heat to Florida. They are a notch above us, in the heat. It's very similar though, but certain parts of of it gets even hotter. So yeah, it's subtropical here, literally. Like they call this a subtropic region. We live in zone 9 gardening. So anyway, where I want to go is a little bit further north, and it's literally hot about 135 days in the year. It's 90 or above. That's about a third of the year. Well, actually more than a third of the year. It's just hot, and that's 90 and above. So we do get to 100 and 105 and 107, and the heat index is something ridiculous at times. And it's humid. I don't mind the humidity, but the heat and humidity together is just too much for me. And I think about getting older and what that looks like, right? So those are some things. And I'm pretty sure that many of you are kind of asking yourself some of the same questions, like, what would I do? How does this look? And yeah, having a farm, which is what I want, and a garden, can be physical. There are people that have full-time jobs that are able to do it. Now, my husband and I, we work from home, and we do different things from home. So I'm not really concerned about us having income. I know that farming sometimes can take a while to get going, and I have a business degree, and all that. Now, and my husband's he has an engineering degree, but he's now in IT, and I'm also in IT now as well. So, yeah. We also think about kids, right? I have a daughter. I have 2 kids, but one is she'll be 30 in a couple years. She's older. She lives in Washington State. So we have one daughter that we're raising together, and she's, not quite a teenager yet. And so we think about also your children. Like, you don't want to be in a place either that's too isolated. So you can find places that are rural, but, like 45 minutes or less than an hour or something like that outside of the city, where you may be able to find some pretty decent prices for land and property. And then there comes the question of, should I buy a piece of property that already has a house on it? Usually, if it's a pretty decent priced home, the price is going to be really high. It's going to be astronomical. I can say that in some states, because of Texas, even though our houses may not, they've jumped up now, but still not to the extent of what others deal with. But our property tax is ridiculous here. It's high. We have a high rate, and it's taxed on 100% of the assessed value here. So there's some other things that you may want to think of when you're thinking of moving. Do I want to stay in the same kind of vicinity? I could stay in Texas if I want. If I bought a house here in Texas, or a property, and I spent $400,000 on this property, I would be spending significantly more per month and over time than I would in some other states that have lower property tax rates. So you want to look at states maybe where the property tax isn't as high. You want to look at states where maybe the assessed value is not on 100% of the taxes are not based on 100% of the assessed value. Those are some things. But if you can just get a place where the tax rate isn't super high, you're doing good. Because in Texas, we have really high, property tax rates. So, if you're thinking of moving, you may want to think of, does it bother me if this state has state income tax? But some state income tax actually isn't that expensive. It's not that much. So it's not going to hurt you that much if you do have state income tax. But some places, their rates are very high. So you have to kind of look at that. What is that going to do with your income? Another thing I would say to look at, like I talked about isolation, when you have kids and things like that, like for us, so even though I have 2 children, one is in Washington, another one is with us. And so she basically has been raised, there's such a huge age gap between my kids. She basically is being raised as an only kid, just like my oldest was raised pretty much like an only child, most of her upbringing. And so the same thing with this one. And so the question is, hey, if we're going to be doing that, what does that look like? You know, we don't want her to just be isolated and it's just us and some animals out there. She doesn't have people around. So we want it to be, you know, a place that is large enough to where there's some sense of community. There's things that's going on. It's more, a little bit more developed, or not far from a major city. There's lots of places in the United States like that. Because we love to garden, I love the fact that I have a long growing season here in Texas, but I don't grow a lot during the winter, so it's okay. Like, as long as I can garden 9 months out of the year, I'm great, because I can store up a whole lot on a big piece of land. I can store up a lot and can and preserve and vacuum seal and keep, you know, a lot of things. So there are ways around the cold weather. We don't get snow here. It doesn't get super cold here. We do get some cold days. We get, they say about 10 days worth of freezing. I'm not sure which days they are, but that's what they say. In reality, I would probably say, depends on the year, but probably 5 days where we get to freezing or below out of the year. And it's probably usually going to be around January, you know, the coldest month of the year, most places. Sometimes February gets cold too. But yeah, if you want to call it that. Usually our weather is fantastic between October and it starts getting a little, you know, March is beautiful. Then you start getting into April through September. You're talking about it getting hotter and getting very hot, getting ridiculously hot, staying there for a minute, then coming back to very hot and hot. So we just kind of, it's just hot a long time. Five months or so out of the year, pretty much it's hot. So you can enjoy the others. So it's like I'm only really enjoying. So when I have a garden outside, it's just, I really can't enjoy it for most of the year. Right now it's August. I'm like, I have things out there. We go out there to harvest and we run back in. Go out there to sow some seeds, run back in. It's just too much. So those are just some things to think about. If you do get property, do you want to build on it or do you want to buy an existing house? If you buy the raw land, there's a lot that goes into knowing how to buy raw land, which I've done a lot of investigating and research. I'm a big researcher. I just want to kind of take you guys on this journey with me though, because my family, we're really embarking on some things. And you know what this looks like as far as our own suburban homestead. There are many people that live in the suburbs, and so they don't really want to leave, right? But they want to figure out, how can I do what I do? I have students that I taught how to, and most of my YouTubes are like this. I don't do a lot of professional editing and a lot of different things. If I can do it in one take, I will. It's just really authentic. This is just us. I don't have time to do a lot of other things. I'm doing a lot of stuff, and I like to show you some of those things as well. But yeah, it's interesting. So take this journey with us. You're going to see a lot. We're not moving anytime soon, but we're praying about it. And hey, if God says stay here, we'll stay here, and I'll continue to show you what we do here. But I would love to show you guys that journey. You know, what does it look like when you have a home? We actually have students, because like I said, I teach people how to grow indoors and outdoors. We actually have students, and one of them, I'm so proud of her. I tell people this all the time. The girl was growing corn on her patio, okay, in an apartment. So I always say that she has a wonderful, if at some point, I would love to bring her on and feature her. She doesn't have a garden at the moment because she moved and she doesn't have all of that together, but she does have some things on her TikTok that are really amazing. I'm so proud of her. She's so creative anyway, but you don't have to be super. She did things much more creative than me. I started off gardening just in containers because my husband didn't trust me to go and start ripping up the yard. Now he does, and I ripped up that yard. So I've been gardening really full force now for about 8 years, since my little one, since my youngest was pretty small. And I used to kill everything. I did not have a green thumb at all. So yeah, I want to take you guys on the journey. Basically, I'm pretty much like a lot of you. Some of you may have some gardening experience, some of you may not. So I just want to take you on the journey and show you guys what all of this looks like. And one day I will have my chickens and ducks. and my daughter will have her goats. This is what we want in our family. And you'll get to see that when it happens, but it may be a couple years. So for right now, you'll get to see all the cool things that we're doing in our suburban homestead. You'd be surprised at what you can do. Whether you want to rip up your grass or not, if you want to keep your grass, you can, because I did that most of the time. If you want to have nice gardens, if you don't have a lot of money, I can show you how to make a nice garden with limited funds as well. There's all sorts of things that you can do. So yeah, see you guys soon.